I know, right? A fool like me making a list of what boss was easiest to the hardest one. This is gonna be an interesting one because I did do the Dragon Homecoming ending, and believe me, there's a lot of enemies in this game, a lot of bosses in this game. But guess what? I'm gonna narrow it up, okay? I'm not gonna list any of the small mini bosses. That's including the different ogre bosses that you're gonna face off in this game. I'm like, there's a lot of snake eyes, and those are the worst enemies in the game. I don't like getting shot in my face by anything. And there's the lone shadows, there's the drunk cards, which they're about 3 of them, to be honest. They just dressed them up a little bit differently and put them in different places, which is funny. There's the bosses that you need to actually defeat to access a section of the game, you know, like the knight, the armored warrior, whatever his face, which is kind of a gimmick in itself, because once you figure him out, I'm like, yeah, it's done. But the bosses I'm going to focus on are the ones with the massive health bars, okay? I'm talking about the ones that have 3 to 4, or they make a huge significance in terms of the story itself. Like, I mean, they have like a memory. So the ones I'm going to list have a memory that it brings up your attack power. They affect the storyline itself, and they have massive health bars. A lot of them do have nice cutscenes though, and it's funny as hell. But those are the ones I'm going to be focusing on for this video, so I hope you get something from it, or at least a bit of entertainment, because this game was just hilarious to me, and I know I've been diving into the insanity after playing this game just so I can make some content for you. So let's get into it. I'm going to give you guys a moment to figure out what is the easiest boss in this game based on the cutscene. I guarantee you already figured it out already if you played this game. It is the Divine Dragon. However, to get to the Divine Dragon is its own challenge in itself. Believe me, it gave me headaches, okay? Because there's a boss to get into the Fountainhead Palace that makes your blood just simmer and boil to the point of steaming with frustration, I guarantee you. But once you get to this boss in this area, it is the most easiest gimmick fight you'll ever do in your lifetime. I guarantee you will only die probably once or twice, especially if you didn't learn how to do lightning reversal, because this is all about just blocking and using lightning reversal on this dragon, and that's about it with this boss. Now, right after the Divine Dragon, we have, you probably guessed it, Kyambu Aniwa. I can never remember this dude's name, so I just call him the Horseman. He is one of the easiest first bosses that you can learn how to parry and move about and do different things. He is not that hard, especially if you get the firecrackers and if you get the grappling hook attack, which is in your prosthetics art. I know I made a little bit of a tidbit guide before I decided to do this video, and it was saying to make sure you automatically put skill into the grappling hook attack, because you can use it on the ogre, you can use it on this dude, you can use it on the great ape as well, the guardian ape. It's just an attack you need right off the bat along with the Mercury counter. But for this boss fight, just get the grappling hook. You're gonna go to Hirata state anyway to be able to get enough skill points from killing those enemies, and just use it as an opportunity to just farm, get that attack, get the Mercury counter, and this boss fight is going to feel like nothing. I guarantee you it's just going to be like a cheese, especially if you use the firecrackers as well. But I would also take the opportunity to learn Perfect Guard. Like I said before, this boss was easy once you had all those things available to you. I know you all are going to think I'm super weird for saying this, but the next easiest boss other than the horseman is Lady Butterfly. I know, right? It's crazy because she does like quite a few move sets on you, but believe me, she's one of the bosses that's actually very consistent on using the same moves. And really, it's just all about spamming the block button, meaning deflecting as much as possible, and you can use the opportunity to recover your posture a lot of the times. And actually, I forgot to mention this in my latest video of little tips and tricks on how to beat Sekiro, since I'm a damn fool. I forgot to mention one of the bosses in this game that you can use the shuriken to do major posture damage on is this lady. When she goes up in the air like that, you can toss a shuriken at her, and if it manages to hit her, it will do major posture damage on her. That is one of the tools to use on this boss. It will make your life a lot easier, but really she's good because when you get into the flow of learning deflection, she is one of those bosses that will teach you really well on learning how to do that. A lot of the times when I started spamming the block button and everything, and at some point I managed to get into the flow of her movements that way. So I suggest just trying it out, and obviously at some point you're going to figure it out and you'll be able to beat her. I know I'm listing her right in the beginning of being basically one of the easier bosses in this game, even though I know a lot of people struggled with her significantly. Believe me, I know. When my first playthrough, I died to her several times, 30 plus times. I can guarantee that. But once I figured her out, like, it really only took 2 to 3 tries to get into the flow of it, but really a lot of it is just timing it right. I know what a lot of you are thinking right now. She lying to me. Right after Lady Butterfly, I have to say it, the Guardian 8 boss is pretty much a lot easier than the other bosses in this game. And I know you're gonna be like, no, this boss is hard. I guarantee you this one is a lot easier than you expect once you figure out that its temper tantrums miss you quite often, especially if you just circle around them and then you wait that opportunity of him pooping in his hand and throwing it at you. It gives a good opportunity to whack in his behind. Now I admit, my first playthrough, I had trouble beating this boss. I actually had to hand the controls over to my teammate to defeat this boss, and that's because it was not clicking in my head how to fight in this game, how to play it. And a lot of the times you see me in here, I am using the skills that I recommend in this, like the grappling hook attack, but a lot of the times the things that are given to me in this game, I hardly use it at all through this boss fight. That's why I was like saying, yeah, this is one of the easier ones. If I would have actually used a lot of the tools and resources in this game, it would have been a lot faster, but I didn't. But his first phase, it's pretty much telegraphed, and you can really jump out of the way with its grab attacks. And if he does that poop attack, it's like a lot of free hits. And believe me, at a certain point, when you do get him into the second phase is probably not too bad either, in my opinion. The only thing bad about this boss, it's its terror buildup that happens with that. But most of the time, when it slides across the water over there, I'm like in its belly. You can see I'm like in its crotch practically, and I'm getting hits in, and I did that most of the time, but every time it did the terror attacks, that's what actually brought down my health a lot. I didn't even bother doing a lot of deflecting with this second phase, and eventually, even when I was getting all that terror build up and I was trying to alleviate it with all the resources I have, I still was able to just not even bother deflecting, and I kept going around him in his belly. I may have died once, but I resurrected and I took him out pretty much with the mortal draw or just hitting him. Actually, I just hit him several times, and that's how I defeated this creature in the first place, which was hilarious, by the way. I know what you're thinking. You're lying to me again. Yes, the corrupted monk gave me a real challenge. That's because if you don't go into this boss fight without the resources available, I'm talking about having divine confetti available. I'm talking about having at least 3 snap seeds available. You can snap it all at once and it'll bring down its health bar. If you don't have firecrackers, I didn't use firecrackers nearly enough in here, and I didn't even use the ash nearly enough. I guarantee you this fight would have gone by so much quicker, and I might have actually put this boss under easy, but no. Without the resources, this boss was hard. Just to chip away at its health was just annoying as hell. The corrupted monk, even though it has 1 health bar, was just so difficult without those resources. And that's all I have to say about this one, because the next variation of this one is more towards the hardest end of the spectrum, just to let you know in advance. I have to tell you, peeps, I have no idea why this boss exists in the first place, other than just to upgrade your attack power, because other means of upgrading your attack power is a lot more tedious and more time consuming and annoying as hell. But I don't know why they created this. Headless regardless. Still, it wasn't the hardest boss in this game. There are several other bosses that are harder than this boss as you progress the game. But the only thing I suggest before this disgusting thing conjures itself again in this arena is to make sure you tackle Mibu Village before you go up against the other version of the guardian ape, the one that's in the sunken valley. Okay, that is my one advice for this. Get to the Mibu village first, and then deal with the corrupted monk there, and then go and deal with Genichiro, and then you're gonna deal with the guardian ape in the sunken valley at some point. And as I showed you before, you're going to have 9 gourd seeds available to you the time these twins show up in the game. And just like the one in the sunken valley, you can go under the belly of the headless one. The only issue you're gonna have is its sister over here, its lover, or whatever it is. But if you use mortal draw, especially on the sister over here, it's gonna go by a lot faster. But I was being ambitious in the moment, and I didn't even utilize all my resources for this. I was just being cheeky with myself to see if I can actually just do it more bare-boned in my life. Obviously, I nearly failed at this mission, but thankfully you can resurrect yourself, because it is Sekiro. Shadows die twice. That means you resurrect once, and then the second time you die. But you know, it's not that bad, this boss. Once you get it down to a science, it just seems intimidating when there's 2, and of course 1 is given a sword in the process. But I believe in you. You can tackle it. Of course there's terror buildup, but regardless, you can still push through. You can still whack him in the ass like no other, and you can destroy him entirely. It's not that bad, I tell you. I know this is horrible pep talks, but if you need to, you can use the loaded umbrella. If you want it to deflect properly, you can do that too if you want. If you want to use the spear in the process, you can as well. But I guarantee you, doing it the Jade way is probably going to come out more successful than the rest. Who knows? But I'm just rambling here because I still don't understand why this boss exists in the first place. I guess we can move on to the real bosses that can cause quite a bit of stress and frustration, and that will have to be Genichiro, of course, for the first time when you fight him. Of course, if you do the Shura ending, you're not going to be facing off against him. At least that's what I think, right? But because I did the Dragon Homecoming ending, I did have to face him again. And of course, when that is. But Genichiro is actually one of those bosses that is very difficult to learn the movesets. Like, literally, you could die at least 30 plus times to him before you can get him down to a science. Of course, I went into this fight with 9 gourds. I was thankful for that because at least it only took me 3 tries to actually win against him, but my first playthrough, I did not beat him within 3 tries. It took literally 30 plus tries. Like, it took up like 3 hours of capture to be able to actually beat him for the first time on my first playthrough, which I never finished, by the way. I still have that profile. I know I keep saying I have all these playthroughs and all that stuff. There's a lot of them that I did not finish. The only one I finished is the one that everybody watched recently with me and my new skin, and of course the video of me beating the Sword Saint. So Genichiro is hard for a lot of reasons because, I should have realized you have to just do a lot of deflection and very minimal amount of counter, at least when you can get it. You can't be overly greedy with him whatsoever. It does help to have the extra gourds, but it doesn't help if you can't take the time to heal, because he is that boss that if you try to heal, he will respond by either shooting at you with his bow or he will lunge at you. At least that's from what I can remember. But yeah, it's very difficult to fight him your first try. At least you're going to die to him a couple of times before you can get his move sets down, especially he does a sweep attack. There's certain attacks in here that you're just gonna have to jump out of the way. He doesn't thrust forward as much, and then there's some moves he does that doesn't ever flare up, and be mindful of that. But usually the sound effects are the better indicator than the flashes. Just get used to listening for that sound, that one sound where it's going to be an attack that's going to be undodgeable, or you're going to have to use a Mercury. But if you don't see a flare up, just jump out of the way at least. But this was a good fight once you're able to get him down to a science. I never did figure out how to do lightning reversal with him. Luckily, for the end of the game, I did learn how to do lightning reversal, but it sucks when you can't get it during this mid-game fight with him, because it's definitely a good fight, especially when you get it down. And I realize lightning reversal can really take down his health bar and build up his posture bar real quickly. Following right after Genichiro is good old Allfather over here, the so-called fight that I could never beat on one of my playthroughs regardless of anything I did. Mostly because I did not level the right skills, and I did not have enough gourds, and I did not have enough prayer beads. I did not get the whole mechanics down whatsoever. I wasn't even understanding why I was getting so frustrated with this game in the first place. And at the end of the day, I really just had to learn how to just read the movements of these bosses. It's one of my things I don't like is always having to remember and recognize move sets each time I play. And of course, he is such a cheat. Owl is such a cheat. And a lot of people will say, he's a shinobi. So a shinobi is equivalent to being a cheat, that's for sure. I'm throwing things at you where you can't even heal up and all that stuff, throws powder in your face, does all these weird shit, throws poison in your face. If you do a charge attack, you cannot do a single charge attack on this boss whatsoever, or he's just going to basically Makiri counter you, and then he's going to plunge the sword right into you, which will either take down your health bar fully depending on where it's at, or you probably survive. More or less, you probably won't as a new player whatsoever. He's one of the more difficult bosses in this game, and it's not the only time you're going to fight him, by the way. And this is not even the worst version of him, just so you know. I'm like, there's the version of him that is just diabolical by any means necessary, and that one was the one I spent the most time on. But of course, you know, I have to go through all the other bosses first before we can even get to him in this so-called game, this video of which one is easiest to the hardest. Definitely Owlfather is always going to remain towards the latter end of this video, okay? I guess you all were wondering when I was going to list this boss, the true corrupted monk. Not only the first monk gave me headaches, but at least you could use snap seeds on that, and divine confetti. Even though you can use divine confetti, I just did not farm for it. So do me a favor and be smart and just buy some divine confetti. Use your umbrella too. But the moment I walked into this arena for the first time in my life, I was so broken because I saw that it was 3 health bars, and it's not just any 3 health bars, it's 3 phases of this thing, okay? 3 different phases, each one worse than the other. But let me give you a little secret, okay? A little tip and trick here. Make sure you go to Ashina Castle and you go to that bullhead merchant inside of that shack and you buy the mid-air death blow, okay? It makes your life so much easier in this game when you buy the mid-air death blow. I didn't buy it the first time I actually faced off against this thing, okay? I made sure I bought it because everyone was asking me, you can do a death blow, a mid-air death blow from the branch. So when you do have that, you just climb up the branches during its second phase, and eventually he will be slabbed right under you, and you can jump at him and do the death blow, and there you go. The second health bar is gone and out, and then you just have to deal with the third phase, which is centipede head, which will just spew shit at you, whether I forgot if it was night terror or poison buildup. Either way, it didn't matter. It was absolutely disgusting. This boss deserves to be towards the latter end of this list. It was diabolical in its spirit form, and it's diabolical in its actual solid form. Anyone who makes it to this point, good luck. You're going to need it, but I have faith in you. This is the only pep talk you're gonna ever get from me, okay? But either way, let's move on to the next boss that deserves to be really at the latter end of this list. I was already foreshadowing what boss is going to be next on this list right after the true corrupted monk. It would be Owlfather number 2 in the Hirata estate memory, which is crazy, by the way, because even the lone shadow in that one was so difficult. But this version of Father is just straight up diabolical, like for real. I had to learn along the way that you actually have to go into him or more towards inside to avoid the firecrackers going up in your face, which would take half your health bar down. And believe it or not, I had the worst time with this boss. It took me a long time to actually get him down to a more of a science here. A lot of it was just like I had to try to not jump away and more run forward towards him, or really he does a lot of move sets that you just have to just jump sometimes, especially some of his sweeping attacks. But when he does the lunge attack, which you can see a mile away, it really, I can do the Mercury counter on that anytime. But it's all the other things. It's the firecrackers to the face. His second phase is ridiculous. Where in the world did that owl come from? Not only that he disappears and then he drops on you. I'm like, what in the world? Most of the time I'm just like, in that second phase, I'm running around the arena when he is getting swept up as an owl and then pretty much flies around and just gonna drop on your head. It's so ridiculous. I don't know, but I guess it was worth it in the end, because you do have to defeat him to be able to get the purification ending, because Emma's gonna need the little branch that you pull back from the memory, which I don't understand the concept of this in the first place. What are you, time traveling to the past in your physical form and bringing shit back? I don't know, but that's going completely off the topic here. Owl Father has some of the most ridiculous movesets that you have to be mindful of. It's just, at the end of the day, he is the true version of basically you have to get good. And I'm actually okay that I was able to defeat him, but I don't want to face him again. I don't even want to face him in his memory whatsoever. You will never see me fight this the memory version of this boss, okay? But either way, let's move on to one of the harder bosses in this game, okay? Alright, peeps, we are at the latter end of this list. The hardest boss in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. It is Sword Saint Ishin, aka the last boss of this fight before you are able to actually activate the ending of this game to be able to set it ablaze in your mind. The first phase I was okay with, the Genichiro version, but as soon as it changed into the second phase, where it changed into Ishin, the Sword Saint, I was like, what? And this final boss doesn't have just 1, 2, or 3 phases. It has 4 phases that you have to face off again. And each 4 phases have different move sets that you have to be mindful of. So literally you're dying several times to each phase to learn the move set. So when you get good at one phase, then you're going to end up getting the other phase, which you're going to have to figure out. And then you get to the third phase, which you're going to have to figure out. And then you have to get to the fourth phase, which adds, each one adds a different attack. It just piles attacks upon attacks. It's like a stacking effect of, they add different things to make your life a living hell against this boss. Obviously, a lot of people enjoy this boss and stuff, you know, and I can understand that because it is what you call the pinnacle end of a From Software game, to be able to face off against a mighty foe. And some some of their older titles, I guess they kind of follow the same formula of adding a very difficult boss at the end. And really, the bosses are more than one boss. Like in Elden Ring, you had to face the last boss. Literally, it was two different bosses, and you didn't have a leeway to regain your health. And so it's a similar situation with this, where you have 4 different phases of a boss, and each one stacks a different attack, and really you have to memorize it. You have to be mindful of what you have in your inventory. Thankfully, towards the end game, you're going to have 10 gourds available to heal, plenty of pellets. You'll have access to pellets. You can use your prosthetic arm if you want. I kind of like sparingly use the umbrella. I guess I just really wanted to get good and kind of basically be bare boned about this and take my own advice of just like, all right, mostly deflecting, keeping myself at a certain distance where I can see the attack, and then counter as well, because otherwise this boss just whips around like crazy and you can't even see how far that blade reaches. Somehow when I'm close to him, I'm like, it misses me entirely, but that's not all the time. And it's just interesting, that entire boss fight. I'm like, I'm glad I was able to survive it, and I was able to actually finally win this game after creating so many profiles. But I don't like this boss. I'm not a particular fan of this game. I played it for my own personal reasons, and I just wanted to complete it. I'm a cursed completionist, and I achieved my objective wholeheartedly, and I completed it in the best ending possible, which is how I usually like to end things. So either way, by the way, there's a bonus boss I want to mention, which was the hardest, and you know, I did not forget it, okay? I'm going to tell you which one is actually the hardest boss in Sekiro, and it's an optional boss, and you all know who I'm talking about. I'm sure all of you guessed it by now. The hardest boss in Sekiro is actually strictly an optional boss. It is the Demon of Hatred. I went into the arena, I looked at this boss, and I was like, nah. I looked up the cheese for it, and I enacted that cheese, and I was like, alright, good riddance. But either way, people, this is my list for you. From the easiest boss, which are all basically the memory bosses, from easiest to hardest. This one being the hardest. Of course, people would say the Sword Saint would be the hardest. I looked at the Demon of Hatred and I was like, nope. Definitely this one is the hardest. And I'm glad you didn't need to actually defeat this boss to complete the game, because if that was the prerequisite, I would be slamming my head against the wall. I would not fight this thing fairly whatsoever. So I'm gonna live by the shinobi rules. I'm gonna basically cheat. I ended this game basically as a cheater. But either way, peoples, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked this video, like and subscribe. Until the next one.